inflation.
Glenn Beck program. We were just talking about the James Bond movie. I saw it last night. I'll give you my review coming up. But we were talking about it, and when did the last one come out? And we realized I have no concept of time, at least for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
They kind of, since COVID, it's almost like that first spring of COVID was last spring.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't, but it just seems like those 2 years have been one.
Yeah, I just yesterday I was trying to think of I got my car repaired at one point, and I was trying to think, was that when was that? What year was that? And then I remembered, oh yeah, I had to wear a mask into the dealership, so it had to be 2020, not 2019. And it's marking my calendar basically at this point. My memories are being sorted by like what dumb restrictions we had to partake in at any given moment.
You know, and we thought our defining moment would be, for our generation, would be 9/11.
9/11, yeah. And this one seems, I mean, especially with the ramifications coming after this.
I think this is it.
Yeah. You know, they were talking about, just the health costs of this. We're not going to know the health costs, the cost on kids' education, the cost on the economy for another decade.
Yeah.
There are going to be reports written about this for the next 10 years.
No, we are truly living history. We're living economic history. Even if this pulls out, this is the first time it's ever worked. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we're living economic history. We're living constitutional history, either the end of the republic or or a massive save right to the edge. We're living revolutionary history. We're living medical history. I mean, everything that is going on. We're living technological history. The change in our society on all fronts. The way business is being done, the way small businesses have been done, the way capitalism, all of these things are giant moments in history.
And all we can do is be thankful that we have such an astute person at the helm. Thank God Joe Biden is there.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. Get your Let's Go, Brandon t-shirts now.
Shop.blazemedia.com.
We have a great final hour of the week coming up for you here in just a second. One of my favorite historians and thinkers is Victor Davis Hanson, and he's going to be on with us. He has a new book out that I think, I haven't read it yet, but I trust that it is one that we should all be reading. They called The Dying Citizen. How progressive elites, tribalism, and globalization are destroying the idea of America. And his thesis is correct. Now, how do we reverse that? Is what we're going to try to talk to him about. Victor Davis Hanson, senior fellow at the Hoover Institute, is coming up next. Back on all of the things that have been a crisis in the last couple of years. Constitutional crisis with the impeachment. President impeached 2 times. The corruption involved in all of that. The election, which was absolutely corrupt. The now spiraling costs of cars and gas and refrigerators and your home and lumber. Food. Think of the inflation just on meat that you're now paying. You're paying $175 more than you did last year just on inflation. And stagflation, even worse, might be in our future, and worse than the 1970s. Many Americans don't even want to work anymore. The American government now seems to have the back of the Mr. Potters of the world, and is set against even the ideas of the little guy at the Bailey Savings and Loan. It's anarchy on our border. Another possible 90,000 Haitians are coming our way. A confirmed 60,000 are coming our way. Afghanistan, not just anarchy, it was a marker to our allies and our enemies that America is no longer to be counted on, and a marker in all of us. This is dishonor. We've dishonored ourselves. the tribalism that is happening, the unelected bureaucrats that now seem to be running our country without anyone being able to stop them, seemingly. The FBI now investigating parents who say, I don't want you to teach critical race theory. I don't want any of this in our school. You now are a terrorist, and the FBI is being weaponized. The IRS is being weaponized. The Constitution is being thrown out the window. Wow, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to imagine that the American citizen is going to survive. Victor Davis Hanson is with us. He is the author of The Dying Citizen, How Progressive Elites, Tribalism, Globalization Are Destroying the Idea of America. Does the American idea and the American citizen survive? We talked to Victor Davis Hanson in 60 seconds. And author of The Dying Citizen. Victor, how are you, sir?
Very good, Glenn. Thanks for having me on.
I don't know if I'm looking forward to this interview or not, because you nail the problem. You nail the problem.
Well, it's called a dying, not quite. I didn't use the title "Dead Citizen."
Right, but it's on its last leg. It seems it's in intensive care, and I'm wondering what we have to do to be able to save it.
Well, Glenn, if we'd had this conversation, I was writing this book in the last 2 years of the Trump, and I was worried, but had we had this conversation then, we would have said, for all of the lawsuits and the subterfuge, the border is finally becoming, let's say by, I don't know, August 2020, secure. And we had gone back to the idea that if you were going to come in the United States, you had to do so legally in measured fashion, and preferably with a diverse immigration policy globally.
Right.
And I think you would agree that for all and I had been very critical, I know you had too, of its spending out of control by Donald Trump's administration, but we still had low inflation and low interest and low unemployment. And we didn't have people staying home, or we didn't have the port of LA backed up beyond the horizon. And you could say abroad that the Abrams-Abe Accord had turned a new chapter in U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah.
We were gradually starting to get out of Afghanistan. People had come to a consensus that now with energy insufficiency, we're sufficient in energy. We don't have to have these optional wars in the Middle East that don't pan out in terms of blood and treasure for our interests, much less the people who fight them. So we were on a trajectory that I think you could call it a remediation, or not a complete anecdote, but we were making some progress. And then we had this woke revolution, we had COVID, we had the economic voluntary recession, we had the George Floyd riots, we had this 102 million absentee ballot election, and by the time I'd finished the book, this was happening, and I thought, nobody wants to read about these abstract historical and cultural and social reasons why we lose citizenship, but then suddenly it's like,
here it is.
You're writing about, there it is.
Yeah,
so,
it's really truly terrifying how well orchestrated this has been. I mean, it's brilliant in the architecture of bringing us down to our knees.
I think so. I think in the 60s, protesters threw rocks at the Pentagon, or they threw paint on the corporate logo at a corporate headquarters, or they went and stormed the dean's office. But now those people, they are the dean.
Yeah.
They are the corporate.
Correct.
They are the generals in the Pentagon. So
Correct.
This is a kind of a top-down revolution. It's revolution. It's Phyllis Quellar's the BLM revolution. It's Phyllis Quellar's the BLM co-founder Marxist on her fourth home.
Yeah.
Or Ibram Kendi charging us $20,000 for an hour of indoctrination on Zoom per corporate person. So it's a very strange revolution. It's among the elite taking these organic forces that have been going on, weakening the middle class, weakening the purchasing power of the middle class, destroying our borders, confusing residency with citizenship, and then re-tribalizing, so we identify by our race, our ethnic, rather than our common American identity. But that was empowered by these elites that want to change the Constitution. They grew the administrative state. They unleashed people, General Miley, James Comey, James Clapper, John Brennan, Eric Kleinsmith, Peter Strzok. And then we've got these people who all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but 180-year filibuster is no good. 50-state union, 60 years, no good. 150-year tradition of 9 justices on the Supreme Court, no good. 233 years of electoral college, no good. 233 years that the states have primary responsibility in national elections, no good. And that's the beginning. They're questioning what, and today in the LA Times, somebody's questioning why, and I mentioned that in the book actually, why we need 2 senators. Why not make them proportionally represented? Why should Wyoming or Idaho have any senators?
Good heavens. Read the Federalist Papers. All of the answers are in that. Good heavens. So where do we even begin? I mean, the average citizen is being taught a lesson. They're being taught a lesson, get the vaccine and like it, and don't you dare say anything about it or lose your job. There is no law. There is no Biden mandate. Nothing's been written down. This is just him suggesting it, and then everybody going, "Oh, there's a mandate." And
it's not even based on the science, Glenn. I mean, if you have had COVID, we were told that was an inadequate prophylaxis. Now we're told that natural acquired immunity is superior to vaccinations, but you still need to be vaccinated. So we've got these people in the military and hospitals, some of whom, a lot of them, 100 million people have had COVID. They have better immunity than vaccinated people. According to Biden, you have to have both, but maybe people like me that got vaccinated but didn't get COVID should now go out according to that logic and get real immunity by getting
right.
COVID. I mean, it's incoherent.
Yeah,
and it's scary because we're losing our minds. All of a sudden, we're firing people at UCLA who don't want to use race as a criteria to punish or reward students, or we're shutting down small businesses, but Amazon and Walmart and Target are just exempt. We're putting people in jail for violating quarantine, but 1,000 healthcare professionals swear that it's better for the mental health of the nation that BLM protesters be exempted from quarantine law. It's asymmetrical is what I'm saying. We really saw that with Senator Sinema in the bathroom incident where she was chased by those and then on an airplane, or when Chuck Schumer yelled at the Supreme Court and said, "We're going to make you pay Gorsuch," and in front of a mob, or they rush Flake, and then you compare all of that to what they do to other citizens. It's so asymmetrical, and it's a weaponization of the FBI, the DA, the U.S. military top brass,
the FBI, the Capitol Police. FBI. I mean, it just doesn't end, and they're sending the message: sit down, shut up, do as you're told, or we'll destroy you. And it's really critical, in my opinion, that we understand they're only doing that because they know you can be really, really effective. If all of us start to stand up and go, "I don't care about your mandate. I don't care. I don't care if you try to destroy me. I don't care." I believe these things are self-evident: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And those aren't the only rights. And I believe in the Bill of Rights, and I believe in the Constitution. And I don't believe that just because you're white, you have to pay for something that a bunch of white people you're not even related to did 150 years ago. I'm not standing for it anymore.
I know, and you can already see indications of that, Glenn. I mean, suddenly the Tony Awards, the Grammy Awards, the Oscar, they just disappeared from the popular American mind. Nobody cares anymore. Those used to be national events to watch the Oscars 50 years ago. Nobody watches the NBA. The only reason that exists is because of a $1.4 billion Chinese market and the endorsements and the money that flows in. And I think people are kind of retreating to a monastery of their mind. They're tuning out network news or network programming or the latest, going to the theater to see the latest Hollywood movie, and so they're starting to resist. And I think that's very scary. And I think the military, when we hear General Milley and General Austin, we're going after white rage and white supremacy, but they don't produce any data that support those really inflammatory accusations. And then when I heard that, I thought, okay, General Austin says he wants proportional representation in the military, or else. And Milley said we're going to go after all these supposed young white people that are prone to supremacy. Let me look at the fatality statistics in Afghanistan and Iraq, you look at them, and they're 75% white males, not women, not minorities, white males who have died in those two wars. And I'm thinking, according to their own logic, then they would say, well, we have to pull them out of combat because they've died disproportionately according to their percentages. Is that the kind of country we want? But that's the trajectory that they're taking us to. And I think a lot of people are getting sick of it. It's just a question. I think there's going to be a big pushback in the midterms, I hope. I see these Hispanic communities where I live in the Central Valley that I think Mexican-American males voted 50% to recall Gavin Newsom, 43% of the Hispanic population. And then we see these border communities where Republican or conservative city councilmen and mayors are being elected. So something happened, I think, good to one of the things I mentioned at the epilogue is that the Republican Party is starting to shed the caricature that it's a wealthy golfers, white, blue stocking, sort of a Mitt Romney party. It's more of a populist, nationalist, middle-class party.
Except
that offers hope.
It does, except for the Mitch McConnells of the party that still seem completely out of touch with the American people. And I want to talk to you about that and also some of your solutions. Victor Davis Hanson, Senior Fellow, Hoover Institution. The name of the book is The Dying Citizen, How Progressive Elites, Tribalism, Globalization Are Destroying the Idea of America. Back with him in 60 seconds. It makes sense to you. It's because he's still a farmer. And I think there is something about farmers and people that Thomas Jefferson said this, when people have their hands in the soil, there's just something about them that roots them into logic and common sense. So let me ask you about what happened yesterday with the GOP, because I have to tell you, I don't see the GOP rallying around our Bill of Rights or our Constitution. And I see them seemingly just sitting on their hands. And then last night, 11 of them decide, they're going to raise the debt ceiling. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think we're in a period of transition, but we've got an ossified leadership, especially in the Senate. But what gives me some hope is that I don't see a national, maybe you do because I'm maybe too naive, but I don't see a national campaign run on the principles of the old Republican Party, and that's a start. What I mean is nobody's going to say anymore, as Jeb Bush did, that illegal immigration is an act of love. And nobody's going to say that the more that you concede to China and bring it into the global community and overlook cheating and patent and copyright infringement, the more they're going to repay that magnanimity with reciprocal magnanimity. I don't think anybody believes that anymore. I just don't think anybody believes that you can write off the industrial heartland of America and say, well, the jobs left because these guys are all opeds, these clingers and drags and deplorable. I don't think that's going to be. And that was pretty much, I think it was what John McCain, that was the subtext of John McCain and Mitt Romney's campaigns. I mean, I voted for them, but I did it very reluctantly. I thought, wow, these are always the people that I never felt I had anything in common with. But so I think there's been a change there that at least rhetorically that people in this next campaign will run on the Trump agenda. Now, they may tweak it or not be sincere about it. But I don't think anybody's saying we got to get back to the principles of Mitch McConnell. And what maybe he did some good things with the outsmarted his rivals on judicial appointments, but I don't think that he and what he represents is what most people aspire to. Now it's just a question of how much damage you do in a realistic, pragmatic, short-term sense by getting rid of him versus who's going to report it and the interfaction squabbling why the Democrats are imploding. So I think there's a lot of people who say, well, there'll come a time for Mitch to step down, but right now do we want to have a big fight when these people are socialist and they want to destroy us, and they seem to be destroying the country and themselves in the process.
The problem is we've been down this road with the Republicans before.
I know it.
And they say a good game. Well, we got to take care of this first. They don't ever mean it. They don't ever mean it.
No, they don't. That's why I'm not a Republican. I'm not a registered Republican, just for that reason. And I was shocked, though, that they really did do certain things under Trump that I didn't think they would do. I didn't think they would actually rebuild that rickety wall and start to rebuild some new build some new areas. I never thought they'd do that. I thought that was all going to be rhetoric, and I never thought that that we would go into ANWR or say that we want gas and oil on federal lands. I didn't, or deregulate. I never thought that.
I know. Well, that was really. I don't think that was the Republicans. I think that was Donald Trump. Most of it. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. Thanks for everything that you do. The author of the book, The Dying Citizen. I believe it came out just this week. The Dying Citizen: How Progressive Elites, Tribalism, and Globalization Are Destroying the Idea of America. Common sense. And you need to pick the book up. And love that. If you know what it actually means, you should get the new T-shirt that is available from The Blaze.
Shop.blazemedia.com.
Thank you very much, Stu. Appreciate that. So last night I went to a late showing of the new James Bond movie.
Is out this weekend. It was supposed to come out a little earlier.
Like 2 years ago. And my family, we are big Daniel Craig, James Bond fans. We watch Casino Royale at least once a year. As a family, we will all sit down and watch Casino Royale at least once a year. Skyfall, and what was the last one? Spectre. There's only one that I think was bad, and that movie shall not be named. That particular one in the Daniel Craig series.
Right. Now, it's interesting because they had Billie Eilish sang the song for No Time to Die, which came out
2 years ago.
Yeah, the song came out in February of 2020.
Yeah.
So, they always do that. They release the song a couple of weeks before the movie, and then the movie just never came out.
Right.
But it came out, it was supposed to come out in, I think, was it March or April of 2020, and it's been delayed several times now.
Yeah. And each time it got kicked back, I went, this movie better damn well be worth it.
Yeah, right. Because if it sucked, this would be...
If it sucked, let me tell you, I believe it was worth the wait. I don't want to hype it. I want you to go in going, it's a pretty good James Bond movie. Just go in with that attitude. I heard it's a pretty good one.
That's good, because you don't want to oversell it. That's a classic Glenn Beck thing to do. He tells you it's the greatest movie of all time, and then you go in there, and it's pretty good, but you're totally disappointed by that.
Yeah, it's not the greatest movie of all time. I happen to think that it is. It's my favorite of the series.
Of the entire James Bond universe.
Series. No. Of the Daniel Craig series.
Okay.
And the Daniel Craig are my favorite James Bonds.
Okay, so to be clear, this is typical Glenn. He's not saying it's the best movie of all time.
No, and I'm not.
He's just saying you're going to feel that way. I'm saying 45 James Bond movies that have ever been released.
I think, except for the second Daniel Craig, which fits right by, what was that guy's name that did one James Bond movie?
Timothy Dalton.
Okay,
it was
it was Timothy Dalton.
Okay.
Timothy Dalton. That movie is slightly better than the second Daniel Craig movie. Okay?
Really? Was it?
Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. But all in all, I love the story arc. I love the fact that they're all tied together. I didn't realize that until I think we got to Spectre or Skyfall, and I'm like, hey, that relates back to the first one. I mean, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer sometimes. And so I love the storyline, and I love I just love the way they wrapped it up. You'll like it.
Okay,
You'll like it.
So a couple things to get our Bond history correct. First of all, George Lazenby was the one with the one movie.
Timothy Dalton
had two. He did Living Daylights and License to Kill.
Wow, never saw License to Kill.
Then it went to Pierce Brosnan for 4.
Yeah.
And then Daniel Craig now has 5. The second one, which you...
Don't say it.
I think I saw that one, and they did not think it was good.
You say that 3 times, and it's suddenly on Netflix, and you're watching it.
Really?
Yes. Don't do it.
No.
Don't do it.
That's because all of your devices are listening to you.
That's
exactly
right.
It's not a creepy...
We've decided you want to see Quantum of Solace? No!
And I can't believe this. I'm looking at now the list of all of the Bond movies, and the lowest reviews they give to any movie in the entire series is A View to a Kill with Roger Moore, which was one of the greatest films of all time. I mean, clearly.
No, it really wasn't.
Some of it doesn't hold up, but let me give you a part.
What? Okay. Planes. They used planes in that. They still fly planes.
Yes. Now, let me give you a part of this that does hold up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe was a prophecy in some way. Mm-hmm. The villain in the movie is Max Zorin. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And Max Zorin is a very strange person who seems to be somewhat of a result of an experiment from Nazi Germany. But so forget that for a second.
Okay, all right.
He has a plot, as all Bond villains do, to do terrible things to the world. His plot was to take explosives and put them under the earth in a very large amount and blow them up, which would then cause a massive earthquake that would bury Silicon Valley underwater. Or it would essentially turn Silicon Valley into a lake.
Why did we stop him?
Max Zorin for president.
That's Roger Moore. Blame this on Roger Moore.
We wouldn't have had Facebook. We wouldn't have Instagram. We wouldn't have any of these things.
Roger Moore
Max
must
Zorin.
Be stopped.
Yes.
Wow.
That's the villain in that movie. We didn't realize that Max Zorin was the hero. I don't know. I'm a little disappointed in that review of View to a Kill, which was a classic Bond film. However,
it sucked. I loved Roger Moore.
It was a little campy, but I loved it.
He was my James Bond when I was a kid. Okay,
and mine as well.
Yeah,
I mean, that was his last one was A View to a Kill. It was 1985.
Yeah, so I mean, I loved Roger Moore at the time. It doesn't really age well.
He was about 84 when he made this one. And
doesn't age well.
He's not fast in the movie. I do remember him in chase scenes, and it seems like they could have caught him there.
Too much polyester and leisure suits. I mean, it's just that whole decade, was bad to remember. Okay, bad on film, bad on records.
70s or 80s?
70s.
Okay.
Bad. We should all forget that era. Okay. Now, right?
Things have improved in many ways. Although I don't know.
Are you coming to the Mercury One thing tomorrow?
I would love to come. Are you inviting me? I would love to come, Glenn. Thank you for that invite. I appreciate it.
We're all sold out.
Oh.
Sold out. If you'd like tickets, you can still get tickets. Just go to mercury1.org, mercury1.org. If your name is Stu, we are full up on stews. So
oh no, I didn't know you.
Too many.
A name quota.
Yeah,
in place.
Unfortunately, it's a Toyota Music. It's not me, man. It's the Toyota Music Factory.
I've seen several shows at this particular venue.
I know. Must not have been so many stews there when you went. But
okay, yeah, this is going to be a great event though, and it's tomorrow.
Tomorrow. And I'm going to introduce you to the real hero, the actual real hero.
Well, now that you've invited the real hero, he can come, and I can be there, and you can introduce me.
And that's exactly what will happen. Mm-hmm. I will introduce you, and the real hero will be there, and I'll introduce him.
Oh, great.
Anyway, he's the real guy who made deserves all the accolades for what happened in Afghanistan. And we're going to give you a profound update on that tomorrow. And I'm also going to be explaining step one on what we have to do to save our country. It's the power of one tomorrow. Okay, I have to get this off of my desk. It's been on my desk all week. I saw this correction, and I thought I just have to share this because, people say that the media just gets things wrong. And I want you to know that the Daily Camera, which is the Boulder, Colorado paper of record, has had to retract an article, and they wanted to post some corrections in the article.
No, everybody makes mistakes.
Everybody makes mistakes.
And that's how you make them. When you're a journalist, you make a mistake, you post correction.
Okay, so it was a story that they posted on 9/11 of this year, and there's some things that they just needed to correct in the story. Okay. And I just want to give you okay. So first, quotations. They interviewed a bunch of people for this, and one of the people said, you got to make some corrections here. One, that he said that he was that he suspended a phone call with colleagues on September 11th, 2001, that he monitored White House orders during the crisis, and that he escaped from the Pentagon. And he personally witnessed rescues there.
Okay.
He said, I didn't say those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
But maybe they got that mixed up or whatever. But
yeah. So they just wanted to correct
corrected
that.
it.
Oh, and also that they said that he participated in a video conference with colleagues that were working in the Pentagon, some of whom he learned later that evening were killed in the attack. He just
sounds like an amazing story, but that part didn't.
Yeah, that part didn't happen. Nobody that he was on the phone call with.
Okay. I mean, look, sometimes there are mistakes made when you're writing a complicated.
Also that he said that the phone calls he made immediately after the plane struck the World Trade Center tower, that didn't happen, and an inaccurate statement wrongly attributed to him regarding President George W. Bush's address to the nation that morning. They got that one. They got that wrong.
Well, you mentioned they interviewed several people. What maybe they attributed some stories from other people to this guy.
Well,
and that's
first let me just wrap him up. The story also attributes to him numerous references to exact times, which he said I didn't bring those up with the reporter. So that. Oh, and his current vocation. He lobbies at Colorado's congressional delegation. And he's not a university speaker. So
okay, well, right, I mean, look, the details of his job are not that germane.
Yeah,
to the story
sure. And if that's your mistake, that's your mistake, and good for the Daily Camera to admit those.
And that
things.
does seem, I would say, extensive, but at least they came out and told.
And the other person that they interviewed said the statement from authorities that they couldn't contact United Airlines Flight 175 was not true. Okay. The United Airlines had down communications, and she suspected a hijacking. She said, I never said that. Regarding the monitoring of real-time live in-flight information, not true. No. Stating that she was terrified to go back to the skies, she said no. That her love of being airborne died that day, not true. Stating that she had survivor's guilt. And her emotional reaction upon realizing that something profoundly bad had just happened and I would never see my friends again.
Not true.
Okay. Not true. Not true.
Look, this happens occasionally, not usually at this scale. But, maybe somebody had a bad day. Also that she said her two closest friends were on board United Flight 175, and she had flown with them at least 100 times. 100 times.
She said, I knew the two flight attendants, and we had flown together, but not the other. And then the third person that they interviewed, they got a couple of things wrong there.
Another?
John Maynard said, I never said that I left for work listening to reports of the events on my car radio. I didn't know that I'd soon be sifting through debris to help with identification. I didn't say that I didn't know if my daughter was dead or alive. By the way, they identified his daughter, and they gave the wrong name for her. He said, I never identified Flight 175 as my daughter's typical flight. I wasn't called to report in New York City as a mental health specialist with the FBI. I never tied the events of 9/11 to anger, and I never said anything about the veterans of the Afghan war. I watched it. I'm not an FBI employee. I watched the events on television. Should talk about their experiences. Was not true. So they corrected.
So at least, I mean, look, sometimes you have interviews with three people and everything they say is false, but that can happen.
They also acknowledge, the camera also acknowledges that there are a few other things. The headline labeling the subjects of the story survivors of 9/11, none of them were present. The headline labeling the subjects of the story survivors of 9/11, none of them were present at any of the attack locations. They say they got
they did survive the date,
right?
Though.
Well, yes.
So that's true.
They got wrong apparently the location of the Pentagon, the timing of some of the events on 9/11.
The location.
Woman was not scheduled to work on 9/11, hadn't switched schedules with another flight attendant. Woman was not scheduled to work on 9/11, hadn't switched schedules with another flight attendant. The year that one of the people they talked to graduated from Boulder High School.
Right.
The trip to New York was on a commercial flight, not a special flight for the FBI. Mm-hmm. The person's trip back to Boulder was not in a caravan with other flight attendants. Where one of the people worked that day. And the last thing that the Daily Camera wants you to know about this article is this list does not necessarily constitute every error in the article.